Did you know that the average American will have between 6 and 7 employers between the time they begin their career and the time they retire? And as we migrate from employer to employer, we have to address several questions, one of which is what to do with retirement assets we've accumulated when we were working for our previous employer. The largest of these, naturally, is the 401k plan. There are actually several options of what you can do with your 401k when you leave an employer, everything from liquidating the account entirely to moving it to your new employer on the table. Let's walk through each option, talk about the pros and cons of each one of those so you can make the choice that's best for you. Option number one is to withdraw the balance. Now, if you're under 59 and a half, I don't recommend this option. That's because it would be an early withdrawal at that point. You have to wait until age 59 and a half to actually make penalty-free withdrawals from a 401k plan. If you make a withdrawal before age 59 and a half, you'll actually owe a 10% penalty on that withdrawal plus any income taxes that you normally owe. For example, let's assume that you're 45 years old, you have a 401k balance of $100,000, and you're in the 22% income tax bracket. If you decide to withdraw all of that money before you turn age 59 and a half, you'll owe 22% income tax plus a 10% penalty on the amount you withdraw as an early withdrawal penalty. That's 32% of that $100,000 balance, or $32,000 that stays with Uncle Sam instead of coming to you. Not only that, but you've also taken $100,000 off the table that you could have in a tax advantage retirement account that could be gaining interest and actually building wealth for you in retirement. That's an opportunity cost that can't be replaced because once you remove money from a retirement account, you can't put it back in, so it's gone forever. Now, there's a chance you're leaving your employer against your will. Maybe you've been laid off and you need the money to live on. Well, that's why we'd recommend that you actually have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses before you get laid off. That way you can pull the money from there, weather the storm from cash you have in savings rather than having to raid your 401k and add insult to injury by paying penalties in addition to taxes. Option number two is your 401k administrator sends you a check whether you want it or not. Now, if you have a 401k balance of less than $1,000 when you leave an employer, there's a chance that the custodian will actually send you a check for the amount that's in the account, whether you really want them to or not. They're under no obligation to actually keep the account open for you with such a small dollar amount. So you'll have to keep an eye out for checks in the mail if they choose to do that. Now, we just talked about how early withdrawals are subject to a 10% penalty in addition to income taxes, and that's true for small balances too. I know we used $100,000 in the previous example, but out of $1,000, you'd have $320 that would go to taxes and penalties if you're in the 22% tax bracket. So it's better just to be proactive. When you leave the previous employer, contact the 401k administrator, ask them what the options are. They may tell you we're sending you a check. If they do, be ready for that, be looking for it, because you'll have 60 days to roll it into either an IRA or to a new 401k before it counts as a distribution and is subject to penalties. And I realize $1,000 is not $100,000. It may not seem like a lot of money, but it's still 32% of the balance you had. It makes better sense just to be proactive, get the money moved, keep it working for you in whatever retirement account you put it in, but just avoid those penalties and get the balance put somewhere else. Option number three is it gets rolled into an IRA whether you want it to or not. A lot of people don't know about this, but if you have a small enough 401k balance, when you leave an employer, the administrator can elect to move it into an IRA, move it out of the 401k and into an IRA, whether you ask them to or not. Now, in 2024, that amount is $7,000 or less. They can do that without asking you. And if you don't have an IRA, they'll actually just open one for you and put it there. Once again, this is a situation where it actually pays to be proactive. For one thing, if you want the money to go into a different account, you'll need to step in, actually advise or request that they move the money to wherever you want it. The other is if they open an IRA on your behalf, they also control what it's invested in after that. Now, they're probably not going to select a bunch of stocks and mutual funds and bonds and things like that. They're probably going to leave it in a fixed income account. But whatever it is, it'll be for their benefit, whatever benefits them the most, not you. So be proactive here. Reach out. Make sure that you take control of the situation rather than letting it happen. That way you can have the best outcome. Option number four is to just leave the 401k where it is. And frankly, this is a perfectly viable option. There's several reasons why. One is it's just low hassle. You don't have to do anything if you want to leave your 401k where your 401k is. You literally just change jobs and just keep that 401k. Second, if you're going to use a 401k plan at your new place of employment, you might want to wait and roll your old 401k into that plan. In the meantime, there's no point in rolling it to an IRA first and then in the 401k because your new plan may not actually allow you or accept rollovers from an IRA. Generally, they will from an old 401k. So that may be a reason that you just want to leave it open. Another really good reason to leave your 401k where it is to take advantage of a backdoor Roth IRA. Now, if your income is at a certain level, you won't be allowed to make contributions to a Roth IRA directly, but you can make contributions to an after-tax IRA and then roll that money into a Roth, no matter what your income is. There's one hitch with that. If you have money in a traditional IRA already, you'll be subject to the pro rata rule, which basically just means you'll be taxed on a pro rata or proportional basis of your traditional IRA assets to your Roth assets. So if you had IRA balances where 50% of your IRA is in traditional and 50% in Roth, if you make a contribution to an after-tax IRA and then roll that into a Roth, half of that contribution would be subject to income tax because half or proportional half of it is traditional IRA balance and hasn't been taxed before. Now the IRS looks at all of your IRA balances to calculate this, but one way to avoid it is to not have a traditional IRA. A lot of people move their traditional IRA into a 401k, or when they have a 401k, they leave it in a 401k or take it to a new employer instead of rolling it to a traditional IRA. That way they don't have to worry about the pro rata rule at all, and they can do a backdoor Roth IRA. Now, with all that said, if your old 401k plan at your previous employer is really bad, it either has high fees for the assets that are in the account, or there aren't very good options to invest in, or some plans will actually charge a fee for having an inactive participant in the plan. In other words, you're not making contributions. They'll charge a fee just to keep the plan open for you. You may want to go ahead and move it to an IRA, or hurry and move it to your new 401k whenever you get to a new employer. Other than that, you don't really have to do anything to your old 401k. Hey, if this information is helpful to you, please show your appreciation by clicking like and subscribe below. That'll allow me to keep making content to help people learn about personal finance. Option number 5 is to roll your old 401k into your new one. We already hit on this a little bit, but when you leave an employer, chances are your new employer's 401k plan will accept rollovers from that old one. There's just some paperwork you have to fill out to get that done. There's a possibility the new plan won't accept a rollover from the old plan, though I can't imagine why, because it's actually more assets for that plan to sort of administer, manage, and charge fees on, so it's more money for them. So I've never heard of a plan that wouldn't allow that, but I guess it's possible. And another caveat, if the new plan that you're moving into at the new employer isn't as good as the old one, you may want to go back to option 4 and leave your old plan where it is. Combining them is certainly less hassle, so you'll have to kind of make that distinction on your own. We're actually going to have a little bit more about rollovers in a second, so if you just hang tight, we'll give more detail around making that decision. Option number 6 is to roll your old 401k into an IRA. Now, I was thinking as I was preparing for this video, I've changed employers 4 times in my career, and each time I've done that, I've taken my old 401k and I've rolled it into a traditional IRA. And the reason is simple. I use Vanguard for my traditional IRA, and the costs or the expenses of the investments are very low. I have complete control over what I invest in, so it makes a lot of sense for me. Another reason is having as much of those accounts consolidated as much as possible makes it a lot easier to set my asset allocation for my investment portfolio a lot easier. So if I want a certain ratio of stocks to bonds, or if I want assets in a certain class like large caps versus mid caps, small caps, international, whatever, I can pull those levers a lot easier the fewer accounts I have. It just makes it more manageable. The only regret I have about doing that is I now have a large traditional IRA balance, which isn't necessarily bad, but it prevents me from doing a backdoor Roth IRA like we talked about earlier because of the pro rata rule. The good news is most 401k plans now offer a Roth option anyway, so if you're going to contribute to a Roth, it doesn't make a huge difference if it's in a 401k or an IRA, depending on how well the plans run. I think around 85 to 90% of 401k plans now actually offer a Roth option, and the contribution limits are much higher in a 401k than an IRA anyway. So odds are you'll have access to a Roth through your 401k, and it won't really matter. For me personally, I like to move everything into the IRA when I change employers just for the control. Earlier I said we we're going to talk a little bit more about rollovers. I want to touch on a very important thing that could potentially help you avoid some costly penalties. There are 2 ways to do a rollover from a 401k to an IRA. There's a direct rollover and an indirect rollover. In a direct rollover, you contact your 401k custodian, you give them the information for your IRA custodian, they mail a check to the IRA custodian for your benefit directly to them. You never touch the money or the assets. It goes straight into your IRA, and I'll tell you why in a minute that's important. The other option is an indirect rollover. This is where you contact your old 401k custodian. They send a check to you. Usually it's made out to your IRA custodian for your benefit, but you still have to handle the funds. Then you mail the check or deposit the check with your IRA custodian, and it just adds a step. Now, the reason you may want to avoid this altogether is that if you hold those funds for more than 60 days, in other words, from the time the transfer begins to the time it's completed, if it exceeds 60 days, it'll be considered a distribution from the account, meaning it's subject to early withdrawal penalties. So if you have a large balance, like that $100,000 balance we talked about in the example at the beginning of the video, in the 22% bracket and 10% penalty, you're talking about $32,000 you'd owe in taxes from fumbling that rollover. So if you can, at all possible, try to do a direct rollover. Try to reach out to your old 401k custodian and get a check to go straight to your IRA custodian. There is a chance you won't have the option. Some 401k custodians are stubborn about this. My wife and I actually went through this not long ago when she changed employers. They refused to send a check directly to the IRA custodian. It had to come to us. We just had to manage a little bit more. But it worked out. Once we got the check, we immediately deposited it into the IRA. We had plenty of time. It's just more hassle because there's a chance that it'll be counted as a distribution, which you obviously want to avoid if you possibly can. So changing jobs can be kind of a headache, and moving your 401k can be a bit of a headache. But the main thing I hope you take away from this is to be proactive. It never pays to just do nothing. Think about what you want to do. Of course, we said leaving it where it is a strategy, but make sure you think through that and choose that strategy, choose that option. Don't just let things happen, because then you can run into some unfortunate penalties and pay some taxes that you don't want to. And we have a lot more about 401ks on our website at martinmoney.com. We also have plenty of videos on our channel. As always, we're thankful for your time. God bless and take care.